Hey YouTube, how the heck you doing? I am doing great and I hope you are too. Like I said, this will be Tutorial Tuesday, and what I'm going to be doing in the next several weeks or more is going between these two programs, the Procreate on iPad Pro and Photoshop CC on the Surface Pro. So as we go through that, doing some projects and learning some new techniques and everything, we'll get going back and forth. Some days I'll just work on the Procreate side and other days I'll work on Photoshop. And on a few of those occasions, I'll mix it up and try to do the same project on both machines using same techniques or maybe even different techniques. But today we're just going to go over the basics of both programs, show you the general layout of them as far as how you may want to set it up, getting it ready to create a new document. So I'm going to do that with the Procreate side and the Photoshop side and just see how that goes. So let's jump in and get started. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the two, so I can't really tell you to jump ahead if you're familiar with this or familiar with that part. So just hang in there if you would and see what we can bring up, and let's go. When you first open Photoshop, you'll be introduced to a splash screen similar to this one depending on your version. This one is a 2019 Photoshop CC, and what we want to go ahead and do is just go ahead and click on Create New, and that's going to bring us into a new document. Now Photoshop has followed the same pattern or layout from its beginning with the tools and stuff, everything that you'll see on the side here with your lasso loop, your brushes, your healing. And we'll get into those a little more in depth as we move along. But I just want to do a quick layout and look at the Photoshop program before we jump into our tutorials. So hang on and we'll just keep moving on here. Along the top of the screen, just below the file menus, you can see the adjustments that you can do to the brushes as far as opacity, size, and other elements as far as what you would want to do to change it. And we'll get into those further into depth as we move along. And as you move along to the right hand side, you can see your color picker. I got it currently on the green color. And down below that, you can set your view types and also see your layers and channels and other elements. These are all things we'll look in further in depth in. And you can change up this layout as far as how you want to see it and what's available to you as we go into the windows and everything else that's available in Photoshop CC. But for now, we'll just look at a quick few things here, get a general layout and overall look of it. You can take your brush, grab a nice little color, put that on the canvas there. Now, depending on the system and hardware that you're using, I have this running on my Surface Pro, and I do have the stylus that does have the pressure sensitivity. So I'm going to be able to create some brushes, and we'll show you how to do that. Tweak brushes that are already there, and just overall get a better feel and look into my drawings and paintings. So we're going to follow up on that. But so let's go ahead and play around with this a little bit. I'm just going to jump around with a few tools and low opacity and colors here. But I want you to go ahead and play with your version of Photoshop, get the feel for it. And I have to apologize that the version of screen capture that I'm using here is your basic gameplay one that comes with Windows 10. So it's not doing the pop-up windows as I go into the selections and everything. So it's just basically recording the main screen. So when we get into the tutorials, I will be upgrading or changing that up so I can show you the full aspect of what I'm doing on the screen. So until then, just have a little fun with your own program, play around with it, do some drawing, get used to it, fool around with the brushes a little bit. There's really nothing you can really mess up. And one of the things I typically do, and you can see on the right hand, I'm drawing directly on my background. I typically don't do that. I usually leave the background alone, usually darken it to a darker gray color or so, and we'll get into that too for the purpose of why I do that. and try to create layers on top of each other, so as you move along within your project, you're not going to sacrifice something that you want to keep down the road by drawing or doing some aspect to that. So let's go ahead and leave Photoshop for a while, and we will jump over to Procreate and see exactly what goes on over there. When you first go into Procreate, you enter into what's known as your gallery. And if you look in your upper right hand corner, you have a plus sign. I'm going to go ahead and click on that and create a new canvas just for us right now. And what I'm going to do is a HD quality, about 1920 by 1080 pixels. And then I'll drop down to the DPI and make sure I have that at 300, because I like to work with 300 DPI. That's your typical DPI for publishing and whatever. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a title. And that will give me a template that I can use from here on out for anything that I want to do in HD. So we'll go ahead and create that, type that in, and we're ready to go. It automatically opens up the canvas, and you are ready to start your drawing. As you can see, it has a much different layout than what you see in Photoshop. First thing you'll notice on the left-hand side are these little sliders, and that helps you adjust your brush opacity and your brush size. And as we jump up to the top here by gallery, you have your tools that as far as actions that you can do, and we'll go more in depth as far as what these do as far as image, camera, sharing, and video. And then those other options right next to that, you have your selections and adjustments. And as I say, we will go through those down the road. But you have your Gaussian blur, motion blur, perspective blur. Then you have your selection tool that you can hit. And as you can see at the bottom, you have the automatic and your freehand selections. And as we move farther on to the right-hand side, you have your other creative tools. And if you double tap on, say, the brush, it'll bring you into your different styles of brushes. And once you go into those, you can see the different choices and everything you have. And you can also adjust those with your opacity and brush size on the left-hand side. Moving on to the right, we have the smudge tool. And as you click on into that, you can see they have identical brushes as you did see in the previous one with your paintbrush. And you're going to also see that in the eraser. So you do have a lot of selection of tools and different brushes for any of those. You see that in the eraser now. And as we move along, we are going to go into our colors and layers. As you can see, Procreate leaves your background layer alone and creates a new layer on top of that. And that's why I like to work that way also. You go ahead and click on the plus sign above that. It creates another layer above that. And you also have your availability to do different things to that as far as multiply, linear burn, color burn, and darken. But we'll cover those down the road also. As we move along and out of the layer area and pop into the color, you can see the color wheel that we are presented with. And here we can select any kind of color, grab a quick brush that we've previously had from our selection, and just do some dabbling on the canvas there. We can go into our brushes, change that up to what other aspect that we want to use, go through the different things as far as calligraphy, painting, artistic. Grab a brush here or two, do some scribbling on there, just to get familiar with what those brushes and what that opacity or brush size will do with those little sliders on the left-hand side. And let's go ahead and pop back over to the color wheel temporarily. You can change how you want to see your colors as far as a disc, or if you want to go more into the classic area, or even if you want to see it as values, you can also go down into the values. So you have options as far as how you want to see your colors and how you want to select your colors and set up your palette as far as your painting and everything. So these are just a few of the things that we're going to look at deeper as we move along into the Procreate program and setting up your palette and how you like to work. You may not like to work the same way I do, but we will get you familiar with all the aspects of brushes and color palettes and everything, so you will be more proficient in your use of Procreate or Photoshop, whatever the program you would like to use. So guys, that's just a quick overview of Photoshop and Procreate. I hope you enjoyed a little quick tour of it. Like I said, we're going to go farther into it as we do projects and everything. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next Tutorial Tuesday. Have a good one, guys.